I stood at the window, my hand pressed against the cool glass, watching the taillights of my daughter's SUV disappear down the driveway. Their laughter drifted back to me, muffled by the closed doors, but still sharp enough to sting. I could picture them, my daughter, her husband, my 2 grandkids, faces bright with excitement, already talking about the beach, the boardwalk, the ice cream shops. I'd packed their snacks, folded their towels, even tucked a little note into each of the children's bags. But when I'd asked just once if I might come along, the answer had been swift and final. "You're too old to travel with us, Grandma. Just watch the house for us, okay?" I'd smiled, nodded, told them not to worry. But as the car turned the corner and vanished, the silence in the house pressed in on me, heavy and absolute. I wandered through the rooms, each one echoing with memories. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, the sound of little feet running down the hall. Now only the clock ticked, steady and indifferent. I tried to busy myself. I watered the plants, straightened the cushions, even baked a batch of cookies, though I knew I'd be the only one to eat them. The hours stretched, slow and empty. I sat in my favorite chair, the one by the window, and watched the sun sink behind the trees. The house felt too big, too quiet, as if it were holding its breath. Night fell, and with it came a restlessness I couldn't shake. I checked the locks, turned off the lights, and climbed into bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I lay awake, listening to the creaks and sighs of the old house. I told myself it was nothing, just the wind or the settling of the floorboards, but then, just past midnight, I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A soft thud, followed by the faintest whisper of movement downstairs. My heart hammered in my chest. I strained to listen, every sense on high alert. Was it my imagination? Or was something inside the house with me? I slipped out of bed, my feet barely making a sound on the carpet. I crept to the top of the stairs, peering into the darkness below. The house was silent again, but I knew what I'd heard. And as I stood there, fear and curiosity warring inside me, I realized that what I discovered that night would change everything. My name is Evelyn, though to most I'm simply Grandma. I've lived in this house for nearly 50 years, long enough to see the wallpaper change 3 times and the garden bloom and fade with the seasons. My daughter Laura was born in the upstairs bedroom on a stormy night, her first cries mingling with the thunder. I raised her here, just the 2 of us for a long time, after my husband passed away far too young. I learned to be both mother and father, to patch scraped knees and fix leaky faucets, to stretch a dollar and a casserole further than seemed possible. Laura grew up strong and smart, the kind of girl who never backed down from a challenge. She married Tom, a good man with a gentle laugh and a fondness for crossword puzzles. They moved back in after the children were born, filling the house with new life and noise. My grandchildren, Sophie and Max, are the light of my days. Sophie with her wild curls and endless questions, Max with his quiet, thoughtful ways. I've watched them grow from chubby toddlers to teenagers, their lives unfolding in the rooms I once painted with my own hands. I've always tried to make myself useful. I cook the meals, fold the laundry, keep the house running smoothly so Laura and Tom can focus on their busy lives. I'm the one who remembers birthdays, who sews buttons back on school uniforms, who listens when someone needs to talk. I know the rhythms of this family better than anyone, the small joys and the silent hurts. But lately, I felt myself fading into the background, my voice growing softer, my presence less necessary. It's the little things that sting the most. Laura will ask me to watch the kids, but not to join them for dinner out. Tom will thank me for my help, but never ask my opinion. Even Sophie and Max, once so eager to share their secrets, now retreat behind headphones and closed doors. I tell myself it's just the way of things, that children grow up and parents grow old, but sometimes the loneliness settles over me like a heavy blanket. I remember a time when I was the center of everything, when neighbors would stop by for coffee and advice, when Laura would curl up beside me and beg for stories about my childhood. I was the one who organized the block parties, who led the PTA meetings, who stood up for what was right even when it wasn't easy. There are photos in the attic, me in a bright red dress, laughing with friends, my hair piled high and my eyes full of mischief. I was never afraid to speak my mind, to fight for my family, to protect what was mine. But as the years passed, I learned to step aside, to let Laura and Tom make their own choices. I tried to be gentle, to offer help without interfering, to love without smothering. Still, there are moments when I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror and hardly recognize the woman staring back. The lines on my face tell stories no one asks to hear. The hands that once braided Laura's hair now tremble when I button my blouse. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if they remember all I've done for them. The sacrifices I made, the dreams I set aside so they could chase their own. I wonder if they know how much I still have to give, how much I long to be seen, not just as a caretaker, but as a person with her own hopes and fears. There are things I've never told them, secrets from my past, choices I made that shaped the course of our lives. If only they knew what I was capable of, what I've survived, what I still carry inside. But in this house I am Grandma, reliable, predictable, safe. I watch from the sidelines as life rushes past, grateful for the moments I'm included, aching for the ones I'm not. I tell myself it's enough, that love is measured in quiet acts of service, in the steady presence of someone who will always be there. Yet, as I stood at the window that morning, watching my family drive away without me, I felt a sharp ache of longing, a wish to be chosen, to be wanted, to be more than just the keeper of memories. If only they knew what I was capable of. If only they remembered who I used to be. But as the car disappeared down the road and the house grew silent, I realized that sometimes the people who know you best can also see you the least. And sometimes it takes being left behind to remember just how much you still have to offer. It happened on a Tuesday evening, just after dinner. The table was still cluttered with plates and half-finished glasses of lemonade when Laura cleared her throat and exchanged a look with Tom. I recognized that look. A silent conversation. A decision already made. Sophie and Max were buzzing with excitement, their phones out, showing me pictures of the hotel pool and the amusement park they'd been researching for weeks. Laura smiled, but her eyes darted away from mine. "Mom, we wanted to talk to you about the trip. We've been planning this for a while, and well, we think it's best if you stay home this time. The travel, the crowds, it's a lot. You're always saying how much you like the peace and quiet," Tom chimed in, his voice gentle but firm. "We just don't want you to be uncomfortable, Evelyn. You can relax here, keep an eye on the house. We'll bring you back something nice." Sophie and Max barely looked up, already lost in their own world. I felt the words settle over me like a cold shadow. Too old, too much trouble. I forced a smile, nodding as if I agreed, as if I hadn't been looking forward to the trip for months. I told them not to worry, that I'd be fine, that I had plenty to keep me busy. But inside, something wilted. I watched as they finished packing, their laughter echoing down the hallway. And I wondered when I'd become invisible in my own family. The next morning, I stood at the window, waving as they pulled out of the driveway. I waited until the car was out of sight before letting my hand fall to my side. The house felt cavernous, every room echoing with the absence of voices. I tried to distract myself with chores, but my mind kept circling back to the sting of their words. It was just after lunch when I noticed something odd. The back door, which I always kept locked, was slightly ajar. I frowned, certain I'd checked it the night before. My heart picked up its pace as I stepped outside, scanning the yard. Nothing seemed out of place, but a strange unease crept over me. I returned inside, checking the rooms one by one. In the living room, a stack of mail had been knocked to the floor. Upstairs, the door to the guest room was open, though I was sure I'd closed it. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just distracted. Maybe I'd forgotten. But then in the hallway, I spotted something that made my breath catch. A muddy footprint. Small but unmistakable, leading toward the basement door. I hesitated. Every instinct telling me to call someone, but pride and curiosity pushed me forward. I followed the trail, my hands trembling as I reached for the basement light. The bulb flickered, casting long shadows on the concrete floor. At first I saw nothing unusual, but then, tucked behind an old trunk, I found a crumpled envelope, one I'd never seen before, addressed to Laura in a handwriting I didn't recognize. My heart pounded as I picked it up, the paper soft and worn. I never expected to find that in my own home, and as I stood there, the envelope trembling in my hands, I realized that whatever was happening in this house was only just beginning. My hands shook as I held the envelope, the unfamiliar handwriting looping across the front. I turned it over, half expecting it to vanish like a bad dream, but it was real, tangible, heavy with secrets. I pressed my ear to the silence of the house, listening for any sign that I wasn't alone, but all I heard was the distant hum of the refrigerator and the steady thud of my own heart. I slipped the envelope into my pocket, determined to examine it in the safety of my own room. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of my bed, the envelope resting in my lap. I hesitated, torn between the urge to respect Laura's privacy and the gnawing sense that something was terribly wrong. In the end, worry won out. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out a stack of papers, legal documents by the look of them. My eyes scanned the words, searching for meaning. There were references to property, signatures I recognized as Laura's and Tom's, and a date circled in red ink, just 2 weeks from now. A cold wave of dread washed over me. Why would Laura hide these? Why keep them in the basement behind an old trunk? I tried to piece together the fragments, but the words blurred before my eyes. I set the papers aside, my mind racing. I needed answers, but there was no one to ask. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a puzzle I couldn't solve. I wandered through the rooms, searching for more clues. In the study, I found a drawer left slightly open. Inside, tucked beneath a pile of bills, was another envelope, this one addressed to Tom, from a law office I didn't recognize. I pulled it out, my breath catching as I read the first line. Regarding the sale of the property at 14 Maple Lane. My heart pounded. Our home, my home, the place where I'd built my life, raised my daughter, buried my husband. Were they planning to sell it? Without telling me? A wave of memories crashed over me. Birthday parties in the backyard, Laura's first steps on the kitchen tiles, the way Tom had carried Sophie through the front door after she was born. I remembered laughter, music, the smell of cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings. I remembered feeling needed, cherished, part of something bigger than myself. Now all I felt was the sharp sting of betrayal. I wandered back to the living room, my mind spinning. I needed to clear my head to find some sense of normalcy. I pressed play on the answering machine, hoping for a friendly voice, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Instead, I heard a man's voice, low, urgent, unfamiliar. Laura, it's urgent you call me back. We need to finalize the paperwork before the buyers arrive. I know you said your mother wouldn't be a problem, but we can't move forward without her signature. Please don't delay. The message ended with a click, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. I stared at the machine, my thoughts tumbling over one another. My signature. They needed my signature. Had Laura lied to this man? Had she told him I would agree, that I would simply sign away the only home I'd ever known? I sank into the armchair, the weight of the truth pressing down on me. I thought of all the times I'd been overlooked, dismissed, treated as if I were invisible. I thought of the sacrifices I'd made, the love I'd given freely, never asking for anything in return. Was this my reward? To be cast aside, my wishes ignored, my life uprooted without so much as a conversation? A memory surfaced, unbidden. A summer afternoon years ago, Laura and I sitting on the porch swing, her head resting on my shoulder. She was 12, on the cusp of adolescence, her world still small and safe. She'd asked me if I would ever leave her, if I would ever let someone take her away from this house. I'd promised her then, with all the certainty of a mother's love, that I would always protect her, that this house would always be her home. I'd meant it. I still did. But now, as I sat alone in the quiet, I wondered if Laura remembered that promise. I wondered if she understood what this house meant to me, what it meant to all of us. Or had she too forgotten the woman I used to be? I stood and wandered to the kitchen, the familiar creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. I ran my hand along the countertop, tracing the grooves worn smooth by years of family meals. I thought of the secrets I'd kept, the burdens I'd carried so Laura wouldn't have to. I thought of the times I'd stood up for her, fought for her, loved her fiercely even when she pushed me away. Now it seemed she was the one keeping secrets. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp, cutting through the fog of confusion. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. How dare they make plans behind my back? How dare they treat me like a burden, an obstacle to be managed and moved aside? I returned to my room, the documents clutched in my hand. I spread them out on the bed, studying every line, every signature. The more I read, the clearer it became. Laura and Tom were planning to sell the house, to uproot our family, and they hadn't even bothered to tell me. They'd assumed I would go along, that I would sign whatever they put in front of me, that I would be grateful for whatever scraps of kindness they offered. I thought of the woman I used to be, the one who stood up for herself, who fought for what was right, who refused to be silenced. I realized, with a jolt, that she was still there, buried beneath years of compromise and quiet resignation. I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, I made a decision. I would find out the truth. I would confront Laura and Tom, demand answers, refuse to be pushed aside. I would fight for my home, for my place in this family, for the life I'd built with my own 2 hands. But as I gathered the documents and tucked them away, a new question gnawed at me, more unsettling than any I'd faced before. Was my own family lying to me all along? And if so, what else were they hiding? The answers, I knew, would change everything. I sat at the kitchen table, the documents spread before me like a map of betrayal. The words blurred and sharpened, each line confirming what I'd feared. Laura and Tom were selling the house, my house. The place where I'd built a life from the ground up, where every corner held a memory, every floorboard a story. They hadn't even told me. They'd waited until I was alone, until I was out of the way, to set their plan in motion. The realization hit me with a force I hadn't felt in years, a cold, hollow ache that settled deep in my chest. I pressed my hand to my heart, willing myself to breathe. I thought of all the times I'd put their needs before my own, all the sacrifices I'd made so they could have a better life. I remembered Laura's first day of school, the way she'd clung to my hand, her eyes wide with fear. I'd promised her then that I would always keep her safe, that this house would always be her home. Now she was the one taking it away from me. A wave of grief washed over me, sharp and unrelenting. I let myself feel it, every ounce of pain, every sting of rejection. I thought of the laughter that once filled these rooms, the warmth of family dinners, the quiet comfort of knowing I belonged. All of it, threatened by a single decision made behind my back. I wondered if they'd even considered what this would do to me, if they'd paused for a moment to remember all the years I'd given them. But beneath the sorrow, something else began to stir. Anger. It started as a flicker, then grew into a steady flame. How dare they? How dare they treat me like a burden, a problem to be solved? I was not some fragile relic to be packed away and forgotten. I was Evelyn Harper, the woman who'd survived more than they could ever imagine. I'd weathered storms, buried a husband, raised a daughter on my own. I'd built this home with my own 2 hands, brick by brick, memory by memory. I stood up, my resolve hardening. I would not let them take this from me. I would not be cast aside, my wishes ignored, my life uprooted without a fight. They thought I was helpless, that I would simply sign whatever they put in front of me, grateful for whatever scraps of kindness they offered. They were wrong. I gathered the documents, tucking them into a folder. My mind raced with possibilities. I would need help, someone who understood the law, someone I could trust. I thought of Margaret, my oldest friend, who'd spent her career as a paralegal before retiring. She'd always said I was too stubborn for my own good, but she'd also taught me the importance of standing up for myself. I picked up the phone, my hands steady for the first time all day. As I waited for Margaret to answer, I looked around the kitchen, taking in the familiar sights, the chipped mug on the counter, the faded curtains fluttering in the breeze, the family photos lining the walls. This was my life, my legacy. I would not let it be erased, Margaret answered on the 3rd ring, her voice warm and familiar. I told her everything, about the documents, the phone call, the plans to sell the house. She listened without interrupting, then promised to come over first thing in the morning. We'll figure this out, Evie, she said. You're not alone. I hung up, a sense of calm settling over me. For the first time since Laura and Tom had left, I felt a spark of hope. I would fight for my home, for my place in this family, for the life I'd built. They thought I was helpless. They were wrong, and soon they would see just how strong I could be. The next morning, I woke before dawn, the house still wrapped in shadows. For a moment I lay in bed, listening to the quiet, feeling the weight of what I'd discovered. But instead of the old ache of loneliness, I felt something new, a sense of purpose, sharp and clear. I slipped out of bed, dressed quickly, and gathered the documents I'd hidden the night before. Today, I would not be a bystander in my own life. I started by making a list. Every detail mattered now. The dates on the documents, the names of the buyers, the law office on the letterhead. I searched through drawers and files, piecing together a timeline of when Laura and Tom had started this process. The more I found, the more determined I became. They'd been planning this for months, quietly moving pieces into place, confident I would never notice. They'd underestimated me. By mid-morning, Margaret arrived, her arms full of folders and her eyes bright with concern. She hugged me tightly, then sat at the kitchen table, spreading out the papers with practiced efficiency. "You did the right thing calling me," she said, scanning the documents. "They can't sell the house without your consent, Evelyn. Not legally, but they're counting on you to go along quietly." We spent hours reviewing every line, every signature. Margaret explained my rights, the steps we could take to stop the sale, the questions we needed to ask. She made notes, highlighted key passages, and drafted a letter to the law office, demanding a full account of the transaction. "We'll make it clear you're not giving up your home," she said, her voice steady. "They'll have to answer to you now." As we worked, I found myself thinking back over my life, the choices I'd made, the battles I'd fought, the values I'd tried to pass on to Laura. I remembered my mother's words, spoken long ago in a kitchen much like this one. Never let anyone decide your worth for you. Stand tall, even when it's hard. I'd tried to live by that advice, even when it meant making difficult decisions, even when it meant standing alone. I thought of the years after my husband died, when every day felt like a test of endurance. I'd learned to fix leaky pipes, to balance the checkbook, to comfort a child who missed her father. I'd learned to be strong, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. That strength had carried me through heartbreak and loss, through joy and celebration. It was still there, waiting to be called upon. Margaret left in the afternoon, promising to follow up with the law office and keep me informed. I watched her drive away, feeling a surge of gratitude for her friendship, her loyalty. I knew I couldn't do this alone, but I also knew I wasn't powerless. I had allies, and I had the truth on my side. I spent the rest of the day gathering more evidence, old deeds, tax records, anything that proved my ownership of the house. I made copies of everything, storing them in a safe place. I wrote down my memories, the history of the house, the promises I'd made to Laura and to myself. I wanted to be ready, not just legally, but emotionally. I wanted to remember why this fight mattered. As evening fell, I sat by the window, watching the sun dip below the trees. I thought of Laura and Tom, of the children, of the family we'd been, and the family we'd become. I wondered what had changed, what had made them see me as an obstacle instead of a mother, a grandmother, a person worthy of respect. I wondered if they'd ever understand the pain they'd caused, the trust they'd broken, but I also knew that I couldn't control their choices, only my own. I could choose to fight, to stand up for myself, to demand the dignity I deserved. I could choose to reclaim my power, to remind them and myself of the woman I'd always been. I had one chance to save everything I loved. One chance to show them that I was not to be underestimated, not to be dismissed. As I prepared for the confrontation ahead, I felt a quiet confidence settle over me. I was ready, and this time I would not back down. The day my family returned, the air was thick with anticipation. I heard the crunch of tires on gravel, the slam of car doors, the familiar chorus of voices drifting through the open window. I stood in the kitchen, hands folded, heart pounding, every sense sharpened by the knowledge of what was to come. I watched Laura herd Sophie and Max inside, Tom trailing behind with the suitcases. They looked sun-kissed and tired, the children already bickering over who got to shower first. For a moment, I almost let myself slip into the old rhythm, smiles, hugs, the comfort of routine. But I couldn't. Not now. Laura found me first. "Mom, we're back!" "Did everything go okay?" Her voice was bright, but her eyes flickered with something else. Guilt, maybe, or nerves. Tom hovered in the doorway, avoiding my gaze. I took a steadying breath. "We need to talk. All of us. Now." The words hung in the air, heavy and unfamiliar. Laura's smile faltered. "Is something wrong?" I gestured to the table where I'd laid out the documents, the letters, the evidence I'd gathered. "Sit down, please." Sophie and Max exchanged glances, sensing the tension. Tom set the suitcases aside, his jaw tight. They all sat. The four of them lined up across from me, a family divided by secrets. I began quietly, my voice steady. "While you were gone, I found these." I slid the documents across the table. "I know about the sale. I know you've been planning to sell this house behind my back. I know you need my signature, and I know you were hoping I'd just go along with it." Laura's face drained of color. Tom looked away. The children stared, wide-eyed and silent. "Mom, it's not what you think," Laura started, but I cut her off. "It's exactly what I think. You were going to sell my home, the place where I raised you, where your children grew up, without even telling me. You were going to let strangers walk through these rooms, erase our memories, and you didn't think I deserved to know." Tears welled in Laura's eyes. "We didn't want to hurt you. We thought it would be easier if you didn't have to worry about it. The house is too much for you, Mom. It's old, it needs repairs, and we can't afford to keep it up. We thought you'd be happier somewhere smaller, somewhere safer." Tom finally spoke, his voice low. "We were trying to do what's best for everyone. We thought you'd understand." I shook my head, anger and heartbreak warring inside me. "You didn't give me a chance to understand. You made the decision for me. You treated me like a problem to be solved, not a person with a say in her own life." Sophie's voice was small. "Grandma, are you mad at us?" I softened, reaching for her hand. "I'm not mad at you, sweetheart. I'm just disappointed. I thought we were a family that talked to each other, that respected each other. I thought I mattered." Laura's tears spilled over. "You do matter, Mom. I'm so sorry. I was scared. After Dad died, you were so strong, but I saw how much you struggled. I didn't want you to have to go through that again. I thought I was protecting you." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the fear behind her actions. Protecting me by taking away my choices? By keeping secrets? That's not love, Laura. That's control. Tom's voice cracked. "We never meant to hurt you. We're drowning, Evelyn. The mortgage, the bills, the repairs, we're behind on everything. We thought if we sold the house, we could start over. We could help the kids, maybe even help you." The truth settled between us, raw and painful. I saw the exhaustion in Tom's eyes, the desperation in Laura's. I saw my grandchildren, caught in the crossfire, confused and scared. I took a deep breath, my anger softening into something else, understanding maybe, or forgiveness. "I wish you'd trusted me enough to tell me the truth. I wish you'd remembered that I'm not as fragile as you think. I've survived worse than this. I could have helped if you'd let me." Laura reached for my hand, her grip trembling. "I'm sorry, Mom, I was wrong." "We were wrong. Can you ever forgive us?" I squeezed her hand, tears stinging my own eyes. "I don't know. It's going to take time. But I want to try. I want us to be honest with each other, even when it's hard." Sophie and Max leaned in, their faces hopeful. Tom wiped his eyes, nodding. "We'll do better. We promise." For a moment the room was quiet, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on us. Then Laura spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something else you should know, Mom. Something I've been afraid to tell you." I looked at her, my heart pounding. "What is it?" She hesitated, glancing at Tom, then back at me. "It's about Dad, about why he left things the way he did. There's a letter, one he wrote before he died. I found it in the attic, but I was too scared to read it. I thought if I ignored it, everything would be easier. But I think you need to see it." A chill ran through me. "After all these years, another secret, another piece of the puzzle." I nodded, my voice steady. "Bring me the letter, Laura. It's time we faced the truth, together." As Laura disappeared up the stairs, the rest of us sat in silence, the air thick with anticipation. I realized then that the biggest secret was still to come, and whatever it revealed would change our family forever. Laura returned with the letter, her hands trembling as she passed it to me. The envelope was yellowed with age, my late husband's handwriting instantly recognizable. I opened it slowly, the family watching in tense silence. The words inside were simple, but they cut straight to the heart. My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I want you to know that this house is yours, always. I've made sure of it in my will. I trust you to do what's right for our family, but never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong here. This is your home, your legacy. I love you. Richard. I read the letter aloud, my voice steady but thick with emotion. When I finished, the room was silent except for Laura's quiet sobs. Tom looked down, shame written across his face. Sophie and Max sat wide-eyed, absorbing the gravity of what had been hidden from all of us. I set the letter on the table, next to the legal documents. You see, I said softly, this house isn't just a building. It's a promise. It's the foundation of our family. And it's not something to be bargained away in secret. Laura wiped her eyes, her voice raw. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have told you about the letter. I should have trusted you. I was just so scared of losing everything, of failing you, of not being enough. I reached for her hand, my anger softened by the pain I saw in her eyes. We all make mistakes, Laura, but hiding the truth only makes things worse. I would have helped you if you'd asked. I still will if you let me. Tom cleared his throat, his voice thick. We'll call off the sale. We'll talk to the lawyer. We'll figure out another way. I promise. I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my chest. That's all I ever wanted, for us to face things together, as a family. Margaret's letter to the law office had already put a halt to the sale, and with Richard's letter, there was no question about my rights. The house would stay in my name, and any future decisions would be made together. The relief was palpable, but so was the sorrow for what had almost been lost. That night, we sat around the kitchen table, the same table where so many family stories had been told. Laura and Tom opened up about their struggles, the mounting bills, the fear of not being able to provide for the kids, the pressure they'd felt to keep everything afloat. I listened, not as a victim, but as a partner. I offered ideas, support, and most importantly, forgiveness. Sophie and Max, sensing the shift, joined in. Max suggested ways he could help around the house. Sophie promised to spend more time with me. The air was lighter, the tension replaced by a fragile hope. We were not healed, not yet, but we were finally honest with each other. In the days that followed, we worked together to repair what had been broken. We made a plan to tackle the house repairs as a family, each of us contributing what we could. Laura and Tom met with a financial advisor, determined to find a solution that didn't involve sacrificing our home. I reached out to old friends, rekindling connections I'd let fade. For the first time in years, I felt seen, valued, and respected. My dignity was restored, not just by keeping my home, but by reclaiming my voice. I realized that my worth was not measured by my age or my usefulness, but by the love and wisdom I brought to my family. I had stood up for myself, and in doing so, I'd reminded my family and myself of the strength that had always been there. But as I watched Laura and Tom work side by side, as I listened to Sophie and Max laugh in the backyard, I couldn't help but wonder, could we ever truly heal from the wounds we'd inflicted on each other? Could trust be rebuilt, or would the scars always remain? That question lingered in my heart, a reminder that forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. But for the first time in a long while, I believed we had a chance. And that, I realized, was enough to begin again. In the weeks that followed, the house felt different, lighter, somehow, as if a long-held breath had finally been released. Laura and Tom kept their promise, canceling the sale and meeting with the lawyer to ensure my rights were protected. They apologized again and again, not just with words, but with actions. Laura started inviting me into conversations about the family's future, asking for my advice, listening in a way she hadn't in years. Tom took on the repairs himself, sometimes with Max by his side, sometimes with me, the two of us sharing quiet moments as we painted the porch or fixed a leaky faucet. Sophie, who had always been closest to me, began spending more time at home. She'd sit with me in the evenings, asking about my childhood, about the stories behind the old photographs on the mantel. We baked together, laughed together, and I saw in her eyes a new respect, a recognition that I was more than just the background of her life. There were awkward moments, too. Old habits die hard, and sometimes Laura would slip, making decisions without thinking to include me. But each time, she caught herself, apologized, and tried again. I could see the effort, the genuine desire to make things right. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One Saturday morning, as sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, Laura surprised me with an idea. "Mom, what if we all took a trip together? Just us, no excuses, no leaving anyone behind. You picked the place." The children's faces lit up, and even Tom managed a hopeful smile. For a moment, I was speechless. I'd spent so long feeling invisible, I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be chosen. I thought about it for a long time. I wanted to say yes, but I also wanted to be sure it was for the right reasons, not out of guilt, but out of love. In the end, I agreed, and the planning began. We pored over maps and travel guides, each of us offering suggestions, laughing at the thought of all 5 of us squeezed into a tiny rental car. It wasn't about the destination, really. It was about the promise that I would never again be left behind. In the quiet moments, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. I realized how easy it is to let love become routine, to take each other for granted, to assume that the people we care about will always be there, quietly supporting us from the sidelines. I thought about the pain of being dismissed, the anger of betrayal, and the courage it took to stand up for myself. I learned that respect isn't something you can demand, it's something you earn, over and over through honesty, vulnerability, and forgiveness. I also learned that families are messy, imperfect things. We hurt each other, sometimes without meaning to, sometimes out of fear or desperation. But we also have the power to heal, to change, to begin again. It takes time. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. But with patience, with effort, and with love, even the deepest scars can fade. As I watched my family gather around the dinner table, laughter echoing through the house, I felt a quiet sense of peace. I was no longer just the keeper of memories, I was part of the story again. I had found my voice, and in doing so, I had helped my family find theirs. What would you have done, I wonder, if you were in my place? Would you have fought for your home, your dignity, your place in the world? Or would you have let yourself be pushed aside, believing that your time had passed? I hope, if you ever find yourself standing at that window, watching the people you love drive away, you remember that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. It's never too late to be seen, but some wounds take longer to heal. And as much as I wish I could say everything was perfect, I know that healing is a journey. Still, I believe in new beginnings. And this time, I know I won't be left behind. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family, or dismissed by the people you love most? Maybe you've been told you're too old, too much, or simply not needed anymore. If you were in my place, left behind, discovering secrets, forced to fight for your dignity and your home, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have found the courage to stand up for yourself, even when it meant risking everything? I'd love to hear your stories. Have you ever had to reclaim your voice or remind your family of your worth? How did you handle it? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your wisdom and perspective might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life dramas and lessons about family, justice, and redemption. Next time, we'll reveal what happened when a daughter discovered her late mother's hidden diary, and the secrets inside changed everything she thought she knew about her family. You won't want to miss it. Remember, you are never too old, too quiet, or too overlooked to make a difference. Your story matters. What would you have done in Evelyn's place? Let's talk about it below.